Hey there, happy Friday. It's Morgan with This Empowered Mom, and I am coming at you live from my home office. Why is that important? Because today I'm going to be talking to you all about my reflections on finding the beauty 1 year post COVID-19 shutdown. Today is March 12th, 2021. This feels like a day that is frozen in time from last year. I'm not gonna lie, I woke up this morning with a little bit of PTSD from last year. On this day, I checked my phone. I looked to see if I had any messages, if school was gonna be shut down, because on March 12th, 2020, we started out like a pretty typical day. We knew that COVID was in the US and there were hot spots, but we couldn't quite put our finger on the total impact, or at least I couldn't. We were supposed to go to Disneyland over spring break. We canceled that trip, of course, when Disneyland closed. And we knew that there were going to be changes. We didn't know what those would look like. I remember interviewing a candidate for a position and not shaking hands, like, oh, that'll keep us safe. If only it ended up being that simple. But in reality, March 12th, 2020 was the last quote unquote normal day as far as our pre-COVID normal goes. I woke up, we got ready as a family, I took my daughters to school, I went to work in the office, and then that night, everything kind of started crumbling, at least as far as our normal was defined. We got a phone call in the middle of the night, I think it came through at 3 a.m, that because there was one case, can you imagine that? One case in Travis County where I live, that schools were going to be closed on March 13th. It was the Friday the 13th, Friday before spring break. And my husband's company announced that all of their employees were going to be working from home for 40 days. 40 days. My company followed suit. And it turns out that that was kind of the last day. The kids never went back to school that year. They never stepped foot in their second grade and pre-K classrooms. We didn't take a trip. We stayed in our houses and didn't see anybody for months. And we have been in that survival mode for a year. I cannot even believe it. And for me, survival mode doesn't mean like a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. It is a constant state of knowing every single morning that I am responsible for protecting myself and my family from something that ultimately I cannot control 100%. And that is exhausting. It is fascinating. I mean, the data that is going to come out of what this year meant and what the impact that it had on our society, our country, the world. I mean, I can't even wait to absorb all of that and maybe even be a part of putting it together. And in some ways it's beautiful. We are surviving. We are not only surviving, in some ways we are thriving and living in a different way than I ever imagined that I would be living. And I'm very, very lucky and very blessed. I acknowledge that. So there have been so many memes about canceling 2020 and 2020 being the worst year of all time and never wanting to do it again and wishing we could erase it. And you know what? At many times I too thought, can we just hurry up and get this nightmare of a year over with? But when I really sit back and think about it, I wouldn't erase it. I honestly can't imagine my life without it. And that's not to say that I'm grateful for a pandemic that has taken the lives of more than 2.5 million people. Instead, I realized that I can acknowledge the negative and catastrophic cluster that COVID has been, and I can choose to embrace the beauty of it. And I offer that to you today, as many of you are like me, reliving the past year from moment to moment and thinking, oh my gosh, how did we get here? And what have I lost? What have I gained? And I invite you to consider that you can hold those two thoughts in your brain at the same time. There is room for both of them. So here are some of my memories of beauty from 2020. The first, and probably the one that had the greatest impact on my life and the life of my family, is that I spent more collective time with my daughters than I had in their whole entire lives, aside from my 12-week maternity leave. Wow. To me, that is so powerful. And that is time that I will never get back, and I would never trade in for anything. Another one, a family of owls moved into the tree in our front yard, and I became obsessed with those owls. I loved those owls. It gave us something to look forward to every single day when there really didn't seem like there was much to look forward to. We would go check on those owls, and we saw one owl move to 2 owls to 4 owls, and that is so cool, and we're already hoping that they come back this April. My parents moved here, which was amazing. They got here about a week before everything shut down, and we didn't see them for many months. But once we felt comfortable opening up our bubble to include them, they have become an integral part of my life and my kids' life, and that has been amazing. And this slower pace, I think, really afforded us that opportunity to spend so much time with them. I've connected with friends from college over Zoom calls because before 2020, we didn't even really think that that was an option. I learned to take care of myself physically without the confines of the walls of a gym and the motivation of exercise classes. I've met so many of my neighbors, albeit from a distance, and now almost every single face is a familiar face, and I love that sense of community. I started my business, This Empowered Mom. I have weekends that are not jam-packed, and the feeling that I've got to keep them jam-packed to make them mean something. I got to see how my daughters learned, where their strengths were, where they needed more support, and I've been able to advocate for them because I know what they need now, because I'm actually a part of it. And how could we forget? We elected our first female vice president and our first African-American vice president, the first female woman of color vice president in this country. So when I look at 2020, I am focusing on finding beauty in the ugly, and I hope that you can do the same thing too. I'd love to know where your moments of beauty have occurred in 2020. So please leave that in the comment and let me know if you are watching the replay or if you are watching live, and have an awesome weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.